Okay, questions about where you maybe have been stuck in the past already, questions that might have just popped up in the body of the discussion for the day, anything useful you might want an answer to, now's the time, okay? So, who wants to be first?
I tend to find that I find reality stuck in like bubbles on top of each other. I can't get into any of them.
Okay, that is...
I view them, and I can see them like little worlds and these beautiful little flat bubbles, all one on top of another.
Okay, this is actually more common than what you might realize.
Okay.
It's always a metaphor for energy. It's a metaphor for energy that you can't seem to make a breakthrough, okay? And it will come in literally the form of something very concrete, even like a bubble. And what it's basically demonstrating to you is that there are, between each dimensional level, there is the boundary points. And if you think about, if you have out-of-body experiences, and you will, to the true heavenly environments, which are like what a lot of people refer to as the high astral. These are the true heavenly environments that are reported about in all the great religions, all the prophets from all the great religions. These are environments of where there is prosperity on levels we've not achieved on this level. There is balance. There is harmony. There is beauty. Do you think that those places could be like that if unbalanced emotions of people from other learning environments were just allowed access to those levels? There's a responsibility that comes with achieving some of this, some of these experiences. And you will find that ultimately nothing but you is holding you back from achieving those levels. Because the multidimensional universe seems to operate a like-for-like rule across that whole set of realities. And it's an internal sort of barometer. So if you feel like you're stuck somewhere, it's only showing you a sign of energy work that must be done. That comes in the form of forgiveness work, self-forgiveness work. This kind of stuff is really important. A lot of us, we really get stuck when it comes to the forgiveness stuff. And it's understandable. Like I said earlier, we can intellectualize somebody's causing pain because they're in pain. We can intellectualize that stuff to death. But it doesn't make it easier to accept sometimes when somebody who's done us wrong hasn't tried to make amends. They haven't even said sorry. But know this, forgiveness work does not require the action of another human being for it to work. Forgiveness work is a very personal thing. So this is why things like the Ho'oponopono practice exist, because it's showing you about taking personal responsibility. So when you encounter structures that you can't seem to move beyond, boundary points you can't seem to move beyond, reality is asking you to do your own work, inner work that is stopping you, because that's the only thing stopping you.
I'm the only person stopping me, basically.
Yeah.
I'm really further at the moment. It's
Yeah.
just myself.
It is yourself. Your higher self isn't holding you back. It's just literally the whole system is set up to be self-governing.
Yeah.
Cause and effect is not a rule designed to punish you. It's designed to actually keep you safe and everybody else. So really learning to take responsibility, really learning that when I'm stuck, where am I stuck? Where am I consistently getting stuck? Look at the grieving process as an example. As I was alluding to earlier, every time something leaves your life through death or the breakup of a relationship, there is a process each of us go through, but most of us get stuck. We get stuck in depression. We get stuck in trying to barter our way through the experience. We get stuck in denial. We can get stuck in denial for a long time. We can get stuck in the aspect of anger. Eventually, we come to the point of acceptance. And even when we come to the point of acceptance, let's say it's a relationship where something went wrong in the relationship, and you've gone through that whole process, you're still together in the relationship, but you've got to the end of it to where you're in a state of acceptance. You're now at the final step to where you either renew or release that relationship. Most of us haven't got a clue of any of this stuff because we're never taught it. It's like left up to us to learn this stuff. But literally, that's what happens when we've had some sort of turbulence, a major shift in relationship. We come to that point where most people feel that their only choice is literally to release the relationship. there can be a renewal. The relationship will never be as it was before, but you can renew a relationship. You're renewing yourself all the time when you're doing this forgiveness work practice. When you're really taking responsibility for this stuff, take it upon yourself to get really responsible for the way that you're thinking, feeling, behaving, everything you're still doing. Sometimes we see relationships as a 50% responsibility. 50% yours, 50% mine. Like if we hang out, 50% is yours, 50% is mine. That's bullshit. It's 100% your responsibility, and it's 100% my responsibility. Because what happens if you are having an extremely shitty day, and I don't take full responsibility for the fact that you're having a bad day, and in that moment, I need to see that. I might need to stand there and witness your story. And if I get caught up in my own crap buttons being pushed by you, sort of your anger or whatever else, I'm taking it personally. I mean, fair enough, if you're actually attacking me with it, then that's when I'm going to be unconditionally loving and say, no, sister, stop right there. All right? That's unconditionally loving, to be able to say no. But I can say it with kindness. I can say, look, I get you've had a really bad day, but please don't take it out on me. I'll sit here and I'll listen. I'll be ears. I'll be a shoulder for you to lean on. Have a good old rant about what happened. I'm going to listen.
Do you find though that with your experiences with going out of body that you find emotionally your empathy just amps up tenfold for any person that once you start to experience and you really come to an understanding that we're all connected, we're all one, and then we're all seeing pain and suffering in others. And I find that's the hardest bit of being back within this reality. You're not trying to just scoop up everyone's pain and cover it, you know what I mean? It's like, I'm going to make it better,
Do you know why drugs like hallucinogenics like LSD was banned back in the 70s?
Yeah.
Because whole generation was waking up to empathy through those experiences. They were waking up and being compassionate towards nature, and they were being more resistant towards government. The government witnessed that, and they got shit scared. And we're talking about the deep state. We're not talking about the average elected politician. We're talking about the stuff that goes unseen, behind the scenes, the corruption, the manipulation, from entities that don't want to be seen, that don't ever want to have an elected sort of position of government, yeah? Bob the Lizard, you know what? I love that. That's better than it's better than Illuminati, I think. It's a great label. But yeah, I absolutely agree that that's the kind of stuff that can happen. It's like a near-death experience. The people sometimes, not everybody who has a near-death experience on an operating table reports near-death phenomena. But the percentage of people do, for a majority of them, it can actually be a life-altering experience in a positive way. And it's the same with an out-of-body experience, because ultimately a near-death experience and an out-of-body experience mechanically is the same thing. It's just one was brought about through trauma, one was probably brought about spontaneously, not through trauma, or it was brought about willingly.
This is obviously all part of the awakening, but yeah, for the last 8 months I've been dealing with astral parasites. So I basically wake up every morning, I feel like a bus has hit me, because it's draining me. Life force basically, but I know the astral and then planes are polarised as well, and obviously I'd just like to go from this end to it getting drained, give them the finger and go to this end and experience what we're talking about, you know what I mean?
Okay.
But I also
You're never going to go from that end to that end if your goal is to give them the finger. It's learning that, like I said earlier, maybe I said what I said earlier slightly out of context. I'm going to now wrap it up in some context. Sometimes when people approach me and they say things like, look, I'm in a really bad relationship. Should I leave my partner? Okay, first of all, I'm not going to just simply give somebody a permission slip to do something. People need to take responsibility. People need to see things. But one thing is for sure, if somebody is beating the crap out of you, they're dangerous and they could be deadly. And you need to look at that. You need to look at yourself with compassion. Have compassion for the other person, but first you need to make yourself safe. So I want to sort of expand on that and give you the sense that reality, the universe, let's call it the universe, let's call it the force, source, whatever you want to call it, but that depth of reality, it desires growth for all of us and everybody, not just you, not just me, even the assholes, even the jerks. It literally is seeking growth for everybody. Your role eventually is to learn that part of your spiritual path is actually using the spiritual powers that you're developing, like compassion. Realizing that sometimes the biggest jerks on this planet are the ones that have the biggest fear. They're in so much pain. They wouldn't be causing the level of pain they're causing. It doesn't mean, take them on as a personal project, but it means hold them in your thoughts with love. Hold them in your prayers. If you go to a dark place and experience dark beings, get yourself out of there if you can't, handle it. And then when you return here, you remember that the darkness requires your light. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I've learned a lot from the dark as well, to be honest.
Of course we do. We can learn a lot from it, but we can learn a lot more from love.
Of course, yeah.
Okay?
Just gets to the point where it's a bit tedious. And
if you continue to get drawn there, it is only a sign, like I said earlier, you still have work to do.
Yeah, of course.
Like I said, you don't go walk into the gym and go straight to the back with the big boys and expect to pick up the weights to that level. You start where you're at, and you proceed from there. You strengthen your muscles from there. Your muscles for, the emotional muscles, the psychic muscles, the spiritual muscles, just like you would your physical muscles. The moment these start to fail you, you have to look at that. Am I not working out? Is it the food that I'm eating? The parasite stuff you were talking about. We have, tons of physical parasites in our gut that literally send signals to our brain that manipulate us into eating certain foods and behaving in certain ways. The first time I did a proper cleanse and I was, using things like Dimaticus earth, shit was going, crazy down there. There was like small parasitic beings that were like not very pleased that I decided to start a cleansing process. And it's the same energetically. Yes, there are energetic parasites that will attach to you. And it's learning that you can set boundaries with that stuff. But you need to look at it because, like I said, across reality, there's a like for like law designed to protect you, not to piss you off. It's like love. When we want to do healing work, what inevitably happens when you say to the universe, I'm ready to see everything that's holding me back so I can heal this and move on. What happens inevitably? Shit gets worse before it gets better. Does it not? Because suddenly you're taking the focus, the light of love, and you're shining it into the darkness, and everything's going, rah! It just doesn't want to be seen, and it starts going nuts. Love brings up everything unlike itself. If you have an energetic parasite, you have to look at that. There is something you're doing that's causing that. It's only a sign of inner work. Okay? We get out of the blame game. We shift into what's the solution? What can I do about this? So it's learning to take personal responsibility, and it really will help you make the bigger shifts so you can literally go from the shallow end of consciousness to the deep end. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Personal responsibility, my brother, personal responsibility.
Yeah.
It's a daily practice.
I was getting a lot of things like that, exploding head syndrome, sudden noises in the ears, vibrating bed, stuff like that, and it wasn't very comfortable. It wasn't what you'd say, oh, this is great. So my solution was that it was deal with stress, dehydration, and stop eating chocolate. I was too sensitive to it. So it can be quite physical things as well.
I'm not an expert in any of this stuff like the dietary stuff, so I'm not here to offer a lot of advice, just a little bit of guidance on it. If you are going to make a transition, please be kind to yourself, be compassionate towards yourself, make a slow transition. Because there's things to learn. It's even things like with water, hydration, like you were talking about. Not all sources of water are made equal. There are some water systems that have a lot of heavy metals. Heavy metals are very bad for the body. There are things like deodorant that we're using, toothpaste that we're using that have chemicals that are not good for the body. it's worth looking at all this stuff, because there are things that we're currently involved in which is damaging our planet. And these are things that light workers need to work at and look at, because it's the same with politics. Sometimes spiritual people see a clear break between spirituality and politics. I can't see it. It's interconnected. What happens in politics affects all of us. How can we not get involved? Everything is interconnected. So therefore, everything is a light worker's role. Everything is for a light worker to look at. What is it within politics where I can start to shine my light? How can I get involved? There are already people out there doing it who have set up entire organizations. They're just looking for people like you who are willing to start putting energy towards it. You don't need to create something from the ground up. There's plenty of things already out there for you to get involved in. It's just learning that it's part of a light worker's job. What is a light worker? A light worker is a person who's learning to stand in love and prioritize love. Willing to look around the world and see that the world's problems right now exist because there are people who are focusing with a level of hate where we're not focusing with a level of love. The moment we make that shift to where we prioritize love over fear, we'll experience a huge paradigm shift on our world. But at the moment, there are people who have a lot more money than we do, who are abusing their power. And here are a lot of us sitting in poverty consciousness, worried about money, having bad relationships with money, and not getting the fact that money's not the problem. Human consciousness is the problem. Money equals food on your table, clothes on your back, a roof over your head. It equals creating a wealth of good things for everyone around you. You can abuse power without money, and we all do it all the time. We manipulate each other. You don't need money to manipulate people. You can make it easier to sort of abuse people because there's financial abuse. Me as an adult, I can say to my child, until you behave, you're getting no allowance. I can be kinder in the way I approach that situation. I don't have to teach my child that people who have money abuse you. It's a horrible belief system. Money isn't the problem. Our consciousness is. You can remove money, but unless you remove greed, the problem still exists. Until we approach fear and we learn that there are two parallel worlds existing right here, right now. One is a world of fear, one is a world of love, but only one of them is real. It's like what you were talking about earlier with the illusion. It's really learning to a deep level that although when we say things like in spirituality, there's no right or wrong, we all fundamentally know the difference between basic right and wrong. Let's get a grip. You're either acting in fear or you're acting in love. So it's a matter of looking at this stuff and making this a daily practice. Because whether it's the diet, hydration, or belief systems, whatever it is that keeps us stuck in our bodies or keeps us stuck from, when we're stuck in our bodies, from actually being in our bodies, being present in our bodies. Any other questions?
You talked about making a difference by joining organisations, but it's really about consciousness change, isn't it? And there's lots of opportunities in this kind of like working
For sure.
methodology, isn't there?
I mean, this is about consciousness development, and it's on a personal level. There literally can be no peace until we really honestly look at this stuff, take that fierce moral inventory and realize that we don't just have a need to love and be loved. We have a need to forgive and be forgiven. We have a deep need for that. Because without forgiveness, there can be no peace. Period. There can be no peace. So we all have a deep need to forgive and be forgiven. Of the forgiveness process, it's allowing somebody to tell their story and somebody witnessing that. It's admitting that there was a wrong. And then there's, the getting to the point of asking for forgiveness or giving forgiveness. And then the point of letting it go. Because it's like the jailer. Like they say, I think, in the Course of Miracles. When you're a prison guard, you have to stay there in jail with the prisoners. Until we learn to let people off the hook, forgiveness work is literally revealing the love that's already there and being able to let it go. Letting the other person off the hook so you can get off the hook too. Until you let them off the hook, you stay on the hook too. Because you have to take energy in keeping them on the hook. You literally stay victim to that other person because you're keeping the energy to that level. It's like my father. My father used to physically abuse us. If I still, as an adult, feel trauma from that, I still have my shadow comes up and comes out in the form of anger towards other people, like my father used to get angry. My father died when I was 10. I'm now 47 years old. 48 years old. And my father's no longer here doing any of that stuff to me. I'm now doing it to myself. It's now mine. The anger that was his has now been passed to me. It's now mine. If my father is no longer around to do the forgiveness work, I need to do the generational forgiveness work for my male line. Because my grandfather was an angry man. If not me, who? As the expression goes, if not now, when? When will you do this work? Because there's a cost for not doing this work. There's a big cost for not doing this work. There's a huge cost. And you really can learn this stuff. You know, like I said earlier, the 4 biggest killers of any relationship. I'll go over them again if you really didn't prioritize hearing what I said. The 4 biggest killers: criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. It pays to really understand what those 4 things actually mean. The dictionary version and what it looks like in practice. All forms of contempt, understanding the depth of it, understanding that you are still doing something if you're pissing somebody off. We sometimes hear in spiritual circles people say things like, I can't make you feel anyway. That's not true. In a relationship where you take 100% responsibility, you must look at what you're still saying, which is actually causing a reaction in somebody who's not in a place to take responsibility. If you are a responsible, mature, spiritual adult, you will not be pushing people's buttons. You will learn that when you say certain things, behave in certain ways, you will be pushing buttons, and therefore you were the cause of that button being pushed. In a relationship of 50-50, I get how that concept is true. But in an idea where the relationship is 100% your responsibility, that does not hold water. There are a lot of things that we learn in spiritual circles that are just batshit crazy and are not true. There are a lot of things that limited us, even within spiritual circles. And we need to look at this stuff. We need to have very vulnerable conversations. We need to be willing to be brave and courageous. Like I was starting to say with the masculine and the feminine. The deepest unconscious need of any human being who is currently expressing their masculine, so that's whether it's male or female, when somebody is in their masculine, their deepest unconscious need in that moment is to feel respected. For the feminine, whether it's male or female, if they're expressing the feminine, the deepest unconscious need is to have your feelings cherished. Whether a man or a woman comes to you with their stuff, they're being open, they're being vulnerable. That openness is a feminine trait. That's your feminine side. If they come to you and they start sharing their stuff, and then you literally take what they've said and you speak to another human being, or you take what they said and you take it as most like an emotional knife and you stab them in the back with it, you're destroying trust. When let's say, my wife comes home from work and she's just unloading. She's not even gossiping, she's just unloading. If I then go into fix-it mode, what am I doing? I'm trying to intellectualize her feelings instead of cherishing her feelings. She's looking for me to reassure her. That's what anybody is ultimately looking for, male or female. When they're being vulnerable, they're asking for reassurance. Reassurance that whatever I tell you, you will still love me. I feel, having out-of-body experiences, a lot of responsibility goes with that. I don't tread lightly with this stuff. Why? Who the hell do I think I am to take my unresolved shit to another doorstep on another dimension of reality? This is why you have those little barriers. But again, it's all self-created. There's a lot to learn between the masculine and the feminine. There's a lot of machismo masquerading as the masculine. It's nothing masculine about it. The more we understand this stuff, the more that we can start to make these shifts. From a man's perspective, I know that sometimes when I've shared with women in the past, they haven't been strong enough to sit with my pain because they see it as weakness, and they've been trained and conditioned from birth to see we're supposed to always be strong. There's no weakness in vulnerability, ever. But sometimes it's difficult to sit with a man's pain. It's very difficult for a man to sit with a man's pain because for a lifetime we've been taught to literally compress it into our bodies, to bury it, to not show emotion. It's bloody difficult. Men have some of the most fragile egos on the planet. Would you agree, any of the men in this room? If you're honest with yourself and honest with these women? We have a lot of healing work to do between the sexes. But as men, really learning to choose your role models wisely. Looking at our leaders and taking a good inventory and asking, are these really worthy leaders? Because at the moment, it is still a male-dominated world. And our male strength is being abused. We're mostly the ones that make up the military. And we're basically asked to do really bad things and abuse the male power. As men, we need to look at that. It is never too late to look at it. We're never too young and we're never too old. We have a lot of responsibility. The women have a lot of responsibility too, but this is still a male-dominated world. Every word, every action of yours creates big impact because it can easily shut down a woman. When you're in a relationship and, sometimes when someone shares something with you, whether they're male or female, it can bring up your stuff. And in that moment, what happens when your stuff comes up, it feels awkward because you haven't dealt with it successfully yet. What do? You try to shut the other person down so you can instantly feel better. This is why we judge other people, because it makes us feel better about ourselves. This is why we cause other people pain, because we're already in pain and we want to feel better. These are very simple ideas. They're sometimes really hard to put into practice. But it is worth it. Like I said, there is a cost for doing nothing. And there is a big reward for actually doing the practice. Clear up your diet, clear up your lifestyle, everything that's been under the rug, sweep it back out into the open again, deal with that stuff, and you will find that your life will start to transform. Any final questions? Then I think we're done. Like I said, make sure